My family took me to Spain just to be their translator and porter. A tea check-in, the staff said in Spanish. 3 guests? Not. As I started to translate, my sister laughed. Your job's done. Thanks for your hard work. We never booked you a room anyway. My parents smiled, ignoring me. I set the luggage down and walked away. Gazing at the light filtering through the rain-streaked window, Catherine Wilson let out a deep sigh. Sitting at her desk in a small translation company, endlessly translating Spanish contracts into English, sometimes she felt disappointed that her life had become so monotonous. Have you finished translating the Gutierrez contract? Her boss Mike called out to her. Catherine hurriedly looked away from the screen and forced a smile. I'm almost done. I'll definitely submit it today. Mike nodded with satisfaction and walked toward another employee's desk. Catherine turned back to her computer screen and moved her fingers quickly across the keyboard. Her Spanish abilities were well respected in the company. Her talent for speaking, writing, and understanding the language as fluently as her native tongue was valuable in this industry. But, ironically, those who least appreciated her talent were her own family. The Wilson family had produced generations of doctors, lawyers, and business people. Her father George was a renowned heart surgeon in the area, and her mother Martha had once been a successful lawyer. Her sister Victoria followed in their father's footsteps, building her career as a doctor. In such a family, Catherine alone was just an interpreter. When she majored in linguistics in college and then chose to perfect her Spanish, her family always looked at her with cold eyes. To use your talent for something like that, her mother would say. You should have gone to medical school, her father would say. At least become a UN interpreter, her sister would suggest. Catherine's journey from freelancing to settling at her current translation company had not been easy. She took pride in her choices, but the guilt of not meeting her family's expectations always lingered in a corner of her mind. Her relationship with her family was outwardly peaceful, but Catherine was always the outsider. She would be invited to Christmas dinner but excluded from the conversations. For birthdays, she would receive only perfunctory messages. This kind of relationship had continued for years. Her language skills were only appreciated when her family traveled abroad. Can you read this Spanish menu? What does this sign say? Only at such times did she temporarily become a valuable member of the family. After finishing work and returning to her small apartment, Catherine's smartphone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw it was a call from her mother. It had been so long since her mother had called that she couldn't remember when the last time was. I'm glad I reached you. Martha's voice sounded unusually cheerful. I have wonderful news. George, Victoria, and I have decided to travel to Spain next month. Catherine listened silently. A simple travel announcement could have been conveyed by message. So, would you like to come with us? Surprised by the sudden invitation, Catherine was at a loss for words. She hadn't traveled with her family since she was young. Me too? Of course. Your Spanish would be very helpful. We're planning 2 weeks, mainly in Barcelona. A small hope lit up in Catherine's heart. This might be a chance to repair her relationship with her family. An opportunity to ease the tension with her sister and close the distance with her parents. She answered without hesitation. I'll go. Thank you, Mom. After hanging up, Catherine was overwhelmed with mixed feelings. Were her family truly seeking her company, or did they just need a convenient interpreter? But maybe this time would be different. Perhaps this trip could bring warmth back to their long-chilled family relationships. As trip preparations began, Catherine's fears were confirmed. Her parents and sister bombarded her with demands. List the tourist spots in Spain, make restaurant reservations, find out how to book taxis. Even before departure, she was being treated like the family secretary. Still, Catherine didn't give up hope. While packing her suitcase, she smiled. New memories with her family awaited under the Barcelona sun. She wanted to believe that on this trip, she would truly become a member of the family. On the morning of departure, Catherine met her parents and sister at the airport. Oh, Catherine, are you sure about that outfit? We're staying at a luxury hotel in Barcelona, you know. Victoria looked her sister up and down, wrinkling her nose. Catherine looked down at her casual attire, feeling uncomfortable when compared to her sister's designer dress. But she maintained her composure. Don't worry, I'll buy something there. We don't have time, her father George called out. Catherine, could you carry everyone's suitcases to the check-in counter? Catherine began carrying the 4 heavy suitcases as instructed. The family trip had only just begun. She reminded herself inwardly that this was just the beginning of the trip. Surely, wonderful times awaited in Barcelona. 2 weeks with family. That alone was enough. With these thoughts, Catherine followed her family toward the boarding gate. The Spanish sun was merciless. In the taxi from Barcelona airport to the luxury hotel, Catherine wiped sweat from her forehead while admiring the beautiful cityscape outside the window. Beside her, her sister Victoria was reapplying sunscreen, while her parents were looking through a tourist guidebook. No one spoke to her. "Oh, this is lovely," Martha said, closing her book. "This hotel is one of the most historic in Barcelona. The lobby decorations are in the late 19th century Modernismo style, influenced by Gaudi. Our reserved suite should have a view of the Sagrada Familia," George added. It was expensive, but worth it. Catherine smiled while looking out the window. She was genuinely grateful to explore this beautiful city with her family. True, her presence felt like thin air so far, but they had 2 weeks ahead. Plenty of time to repair relationships. When the taxi stopped in front of the hotel, the driver began unloading luggage from the trunk. "Catherine, could you carry the bags?" Her father said. "I'll give the tip later." She nodded silently and took hold of the 4 heavy suitcases. Fortunately, a hotel porter quickly came to her aid. Her family had already gone ahead into the luxurious lobby. Marble floors, towering columns, and dazzling chandeliers. The hotel's interior was breathtakingly beautiful. Catherine, dragging her tired body, was captivated by its beauty. Her family had already headed to the front desk, and she hurried to catch up. "Here's the reservation for the Wilsons," the young male staff member at the front desk greeted with a smile. His name tag read Carlos. "Yes, that's right," George replied. 1 suite and 2 regular rooms. Carlos checked the computer and said something in Spanish. Everyone in the family, except Catherine, looked confused. "What did he say?" Martha asked Catherine. Before Catherine could answer, Carlos switched to English. "I apologize. After checking your reservation, I see there are 3 rooms. Will there be 4 guests staying with us?" "Yes, that's right," Martha answered. "The 4 of us, family." Carlos again stared at the computer screen, tilting his head in confusion. He began speaking in Spanish again, probably deciding it was difficult to explain in English. "The reservation is for 3 people, but there are 4 of you? We can arrange another room for tonight, only with an additional fee." Catherine opened her mouth to translate for her family. "He's saying there's only a reservation for 3 people. If we need another room, it will cost extra, but he can only arrange it for tonight." At that moment, her sister Victoria suddenly let out a loud laugh. "Oh, job done. Good work." Catherine looked at her sister in confusion. "What did you say?" Victoria continued with a malicious smile. "We never made a reservation for you in the first place. Why are you surprised?" Catherine felt the world darken around her. "What do you mean?" "The hotel reservation was always for 3 rooms. 1 for Dad and Mom, and 1 for me. We only brought you along as an interpreter," Victoria stated matter-of-factly. Catherine looked at her parents. They remained silent, wearing somewhat awkward expressions. Her father averted his gaze, and her mother pretended to search for something in her handbag. "I'm sorry, Cassie," her father finally spoke. "Actually, we never planned for you to stay at the hotel. We just needed your help carrying the luggage from the airport to the hotel. After that, well, you're free to go." "Free?" Catherine repeated in disbelief. "You invited me on a 2-week trip, and now you're saying I don't even have a place to stay?" "Don't misunderstand," her mother interjected. "We needed your language skills. But honestly, staying at a luxury hotel doesn't, well, suit your economic situation, does it?" Catherine froze. The cold treatment she had felt from her family for years was beyond her imagination. They truly saw her only as a tool, as a convenient interpreter in a country where they couldn't speak the language, as someone to carry heavy luggage. Carlos at the front desk seemed to sense the situation and gave Catherine a sympathetic look. He said quietly in Spanish, "Are you all right?" "Can I help?" Catherine replied in Spanish, "Thank you. But I'm fine." Shame and anger welled up inside her simultaneously. All these years she had sought her family's love that remained out of reach no matter how hard she tried. It was time to accept this sad reality. "I understand," Catherine said calmly. I'm just an interpreter and a baggage carrier. But my job is done now, so I'll take my leave. She reached for her own suitcase, pulling it out from the pile of luggage in the hotel lounge. In her haste, she inadvertently picked up another bag. It was the small travel bag her father had been carefully carrying. The precious items bag containing everyone's passports, wallets, and credit cards. Wait, her father called, but Catherine didn't turn around. I've been used all this time, she said with her back still turned. It's over now. You can hire interpreters at the hotel, can't you? Since you have the money. With those words, Catherine crossed the hotel lobby toward the entrance. Her head was filled with complex emotions. Anger, sadness, and a strange sense of liberation. The feeling of being freed from years of illusion. Wait. Her mother's cry came from behind. But she didn't stop. The bag on her shoulder felt heavy, but it was the weight of her heart taking physical form. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the bright Barcelona sunlight. Catherine moved her feet unconsciously. About 10 minutes from the hotel, she finally stopped and looked around. She had wandered into a narrow alley in the Gothic quarter. The old cobblestone street, colorful buildings on both sides, and the distant noise of the boulevard. She realized for the first time that she was truly alone. The weight of the bag on her shoulder bothered her, and when she sat on a bench to check its contents, she was stunned. It was her father's valuables bag. Opening it, she found everyone's passports, cash, and credit cards neatly arranged. She had taken it in her haste. This is bad, Catherine murmured. She wavered between returning it immediately, but the humiliating scene from earlier flashed in her mind, making her grimace. But I can't just keep this. To organize her thoughts, Catherine entered a nearby cafe. Ordering coffee and sitting by the window, she checked the bag's contents again. There was a substantial amount of cash. The money converted to euros was equivalent to several months of her salary. I can't consider not returning this, she told herself. But going back right away. Just then, a woman at the next table let out a heavy sigh, a local woman in her mid-40s, holding her head in her hands before a pile of documents and a laptop. Catherine overheard her speaking on the phone with someone. In fluent Spanish, she was complaining about a guide suddenly falling ill, having no replacement, and having to cancel. After hanging up, the woman reached for her coffee but accidentally knocked over the cup. Coffee spread across the table, staining the documents. Oh, this is the worst, the woman exclaimed. Catherine instinctively stood up and rushed to the woman's table with napkins. Let me help, she said in fluent Spanish, stopping the coffee from spreading to more documents. The woman looked up at her with surprise. Thank you. Your Spanish is very good. I've been an interpreter for over 10 years. Catherine replied with a smile. After saving the documents, the woman introduced herself. Elena Rodriguez, owner of a small local travel company called Barcelona Adventures. I'm in a terrible situation, Elena said. The guide who was supposed to lead a group of English-speaking tourists this afternoon suddenly fell ill. Catherine found herself saying, I could help if you'd like. Elena's eyes lit up. Really? Are you familiar with Barcelona? Actually, it's my first time, Catherine answered honestly. But I've prepared basic tourist information for my family. I have no problem with Spanish and English. I'm also interested in history and culture. Elena studied her intently, then nodded decisively. Then, would you like to try guiding today's tour? It's an emergency. I'll pay you, of course. Catherine accepted without hesitation. She had a feeling this chance encounter might become a new beginning. But in these clothes, Catherine looked down at her casual travel attire. Don't worry, Elena said with a smile. Come to the office. We have uniforms, and we have some time, so I can explain the tour details. On the way to the office, Catherine momentarily forgot about her family. But the weight of the bag reminded her of reality. She would think about the passports later. Now she needed to focus on the opportunity before her. Elena's office was small but vibrant. Beautiful photos of Barcelona adorned the walls, and shelves were neatly lined with tourist guides and maps. Elena gave her a blue polo shirt and cap, then explained today's tour outline. It's a tour centered on the Gothic Quarter and the Picasso Museum. There are 12 participants, all English-speaking tourists. The basic route is on this map. At the museum, I'd like you to explain some particularly important works. Catherine listened attentively to Elena's explanation, taking notes. She felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. but decided to believe in her abilities. I have one more request, Elena continued, sounding a bit uncomfortable. Actually, my company is still small. I'll pay you in cash, but I might not be able to withdraw it before the bank closes. I'll definitely give it to you tomorrow morning. Can you wait until then? Catherine unconsciously glanced at her father's bag. There was plenty of cash inside. She felt a momentary guilt, but quickly changed her mindset. That's fine. More importantly, I need to find a place to stay tonight. Did something happen? Elena seemed to sense something from her expression. Catherine briefly explained the situation, being abandoned by her family, not having a hotel reservation. She omitted details, but Elena's expression was sympathetic. That must have been hard. I know a reasonably priced hotel nearby. I'll call and make a reservation for you. That afternoon, Catherine guided 12 tourists on her first tour. She was nervous at first, but combining the materials Elena had prepared with her own prior research, she gradually gained confidence in her explanations. The tourists seemed satisfied with her fluent English and Spanish, and her sincere approach. How long have you been working in Barcelona? An American tourist asked. Actually, today is my first day, Catherine answered honestly. But I'm happy to share this city's charm with all of you. Her frankness seemed to be well received, and at the end of the tour, everyone gave her warm applause. Some were even impressed enough with her guiding to leave tips. Elena was delighted with Catherine's performance. You really have talent. The tourists were all praising you. Catherine felt embarrassed but inwardly savored a small sense of victory. It was the first time her language abilities had been truly appreciated. Just hours after leaving her family at the hotel, her world had transformed. Actually, we have tours every day for the next week, Elena said, when she returned to the office. Would you be willing to lead them all? Our guide won't recover quickly. Of course. Catherine answered without hesitation. I'd be happy to accept. Elena had reserved a hotel for her. Though small, it was clean and comfortable. Catherine borrowed a little money from her father's bag to buy new clothes and necessary toiletries. When she entered her room and lay on the bed, she reflected on the day's events. This morning she had been carrying her family's luggage, but by evening she had become a tour guide. Such is the irony of life. And the passports and cash in the bag, she would think about that tomorrow. Tonight, she wanted to sleep filled with new possibilities. The next morning, Catherine woke up more energetically than expected. While having breakfast, she thought about her family. By now, they must have realized their passports and money were missing and would be panicking. She felt a little guilty, but even more so, she felt elated about starting on her own path. That day too, Catherine guided tours according to Elena's instructions. She was able to convey Barcelona's charm with even more confidence than the day before. The response from participants was excellent, and her guiding was becoming well regarded. On the morning of the third day, Elena was waiting for her at the office. Your guiding is getting quite a reputation. Bookings are increasing. I'd like to contract you for the full week. Catherine gladly accepted. However, immediately afterward, the office door opened, and unexpected visitors appeared. Catherine. Turning around, she saw her parents and sisters standing there. All three looked exhausted, especially her father, who appeared completely drained. Catherine gasped. She wondered how her family had found her, but though Barcelona was a large city, tourist facilities were limited. They had probably been visiting travel agencies one after another. So you took our passports and money? Victoria accused in a condemning tone. Catherine tried to maintain her composure. I didn't take them intentionally. I was in a hurry. Please, her father interrupted. Just return the passports. We went to the consulate, but the procedures were complicated. Have you been struggling for 3 days? Catherine quietly asked. Without being able to communicate, without money, how did it feel? What are you trying to say? Her sister didn't hide her irritation. That's how I felt all along. Catherine's voice trembled. Being treated like a convenient tool by my family. Only needed when language skills were required. Elena watched this strange confrontation. She gave Catherine a small nod and retreated to the back of the office. She didn't seem to want to interfere in this family matter. We were wrong, her mother spoke for the first time. We didn't value you. But now, we're really in trouble. Won't you help us? Catherine looked at each family member's face. Their expressions certainly showed confusion and regret. But was it truly regret for how they had treated her, or just a desire to escape their difficult situation. "I'll return the passports," Catherine said with determination. "But I have a condition." "Condition?" all three asked simultaneously. "To understand how I've felt all this time, spend 3 days as tourists in an environment where you don't speak the language," Catherine proposed. "Using only English, not Spanish. Join the tour's e-guide. After that, I'll return your passports." The family looked surprised but had no choice. They reluctantly agreed. "Until then, I'll continue working here," Catherine added. "Thanks to Elena, I've been truly valued for the first time." Seeing her determination, her family couldn't argue. After they left, Elena returned. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Catherine took a deep breath and smiled. "Yes, I'm fine. I'll be guiding some special guests for the next 3 days." Elena nodded understandingly. "You'll make a wonderful guide. Don't waste your talent." Catherine looked up at the bright Barcelona sky outside the window. The path ahead might not be smooth, but for the first time, it was a path she had chosen for herself. The 3-day challenge became a revealing experience for the Wilson family. Participating in tours guided by Catherine, they experienced for the first time the anxiety and loneliness of being foreigners. On the first day, George, Martha, and Victoria reluctantly joined the tour. Following Catherine's English guidance, the three tried not to make eye contact with her, wanting to deny her recognition. However, seeing other tourists exclaim in admiration at Catherine's fluent explanations and extensive knowledge, their expressions gradually changed. "Is that really Cassie?" Martha whispered to her husband at lunchtime. "She seems so confident." George nodded quietly. "I didn't know that she had such talent." On the second day, an interesting incident occurred. At a restaurant for lunch, the waiter didn't understand English at all, and the menu was only in Spanish. The three Wilsons were confused, experiencing for the first time the anxiety of not being understood. Catherine was busy attending to other guests and couldn't help them. In the end, they had to point at pictures to order, resulting in unexpected dishes being served, much to their dismay. "What should I say?" Victoria was flustered. "This is not what I wanted." "Cassie must have felt like this every day," Martha said softly. Like she was the only one speaking a different language in the family. On the morning of the 3rd day, Martha was secretly crying in her room. Reflecting on her years of behavior, she truly regretted her coldness toward her daughter for the first time. "We've done terrible things," she said to George. "We haven't treated Cassie as a real family member." George, after a heavy silence, agreed. "We couldn't see her value. As if only doctors and lawyers deserve respect." After the final tour ended, Catherine waited for her family at Elena's office. As promised, it was time to return the passports and remaining money. However, complex emotions swirled in her heart. Had they truly changed? Or was it just an act to escape their difficulties? The door opened, and her family entered. All three looked tired, but Martha's eyes in particular were red and swollen from tears. "Cassie," Martha spoke first. "I want to apologize to you. I'm truly sorry." Catherine listened silently. "Your talent is wonderful," Martha continued. "I saw how much the tourists trust you. They're doing what we as a family never did." George also stepped forward. "Cassie, I want to apologize too. You were always valuable. But we hurt you with our prejudice." A small light kindled in Catherine's heart. Her parents' words sounded sincere. However, her sister Victoria stood unhappily with folded arms by the wall. "I'll return the passports as promised." Catherine took the bag from the desk drawer. "All the money is still there too. I only use the minimum for living expenses." Martha took her daughter's hand. "The money doesn't matter. Instead, would you join us for dinner tonight? We've made a special reservation for you." Catherine looked surprised. "For me?" "Yes," George said with a smile. "It's a seafood restaurant you like. Elena told us about it." At that moment, Victoria irritably interrupted. "Can we stop this charade? Let's end this farce. Return the passports, and let's get back to the hotel." The atmosphere in the room instantly froze. The parents were at a loss for words, and Catherine looked coldly at her sister. "Same old sister," Catherine said quietly. "So nothing has really changed after all?" Martha and George looked at their daughters with confused expressions, but didn't intervene. As always, They were trying to avoid the problem. At that moment, the office door opened, and Elena entered. She gave Catherine a warm smile. "I have something to tell you," Elena said excitedly. "Wonderful news. Barcelona Adventures is expanding. We need a guide who speaks English and Spanish. I want you to work with us as a full-time employee." Catherine's eyes widened. "Full-time? Really?" Elena nodded. "Your talent is special. Why not start your new life here in Barcelona?" Everyone in the room was surprised by this unexpected development. In Catherine's heart, something became certain. She handed the bag with the passports to her family. "I'm returning these," Catherine said quietly. "But from now on, I'll live my own life." She turned to Elena. "I accept your offer. I want to find a new beginning here." In that moment, Catherine's face showed a conviction and radiance that hadn't been seen for years. In the refreshing Mediterranean breeze of early summer in Barcelona, Catherine stood in front of the Sagrada Familia, explaining to a small group of tourists in fluent Spanish and English. The tourists exclaimed in admiration at her explanations. Her hair was shorter than before, and her skin had tanned to a healthy wheat color from the Mediterranean sun. Confidence and fulfillment dwelled in her eyes, and she smiled much more than a year ago. And this sculpture is one of Gaudi's later works. After his death in an accident, it was continued by his disciples. After finishing the tour, Catherine checked her smartphone. 2 unread messages. One from Elena, another from her mother. Her parents were supposed to arrive in Barcelona to visit her today. Barcelona Adventures had grown significantly in a year. Catherine and Elena had become business partners, expanding their business. With the concept of authentic local experiences, they now offered tours not only to traditional tourist spots, but also to places known only to locals. Catherine's guiding had become renowned by word of mouth, and reservations were always full. Returning to the office, Elena greeted her with a smile. "Your parents have arrived safely. They're checking in at the hotel." Catherine took a deep breath. It would be the first reunion with her parents in months. Since that incident, she hadn't returned to America, only keeping in touch by phone and video calls. At first it was awkward, but as time passed, her relationship with her mother in particular improved. "Nervous?" Elena asked kindly. "A little," Catherine answered honestly. "But not like before. I have this place now." In the evening, Catherine met her parents at an upscale restaurant. From the terrace seats, they could see the twilight view of Barcelona. When she spotted her parents, her heart raced. The year had brought changes to them too. Her father had more gray hair, and her mother's expression had softened. "Cassie." Martha rushed to embrace her daughter tightly when she saw her. George also approached with a warm smile, exchanging hugs. "You've really come into your own," George said proudly. "We heard about your company from Elena. It's a wonderful success." As the three sat at the table, Catherine observed her parents. Their attitude no longer held the arrogance of before. Instead, there was a gaze of genuine respect for their daughter. "What about Victoria?" Catherine was curious enough to ask. Martha's expression clouded slightly. "Still stubborn. But she's changing little by little. She couldn't come this time because of work, but I think someday she'll understand." As the conversation progressed, Catherine realized that her parents had truly changed. They showed interest in her work and asked detailed questions about her new life in Barcelona. Catherine answered honestly, sometimes laughing, sometimes serious, recounting her experiences over the past year. "We're truly proud of you," George said with a serious expression. "You found your own path. Not in the environment we provided, but one you carved out yourself." Martha had tears in her eyes. "I want to sincerely apologize for not treating you as a real family member. Can you forgive me?" Catherine took her parents' hands. "That's in the past. What matters is how we live from now on." That night, the three talked late into the evening. It was the first step in healing past wounds and building a new relationship. 2 months later, there was an unexpected visitor. Victoria. She was revisiting Spain on a luxury resort tour, but trouble struck when her guide suddenly fell ill and the tour was cancelled. Struggling with the language barrier, she ironically sought help from her sister's company. "I need your help." Victoria awkwardly visited the office. "I heard your company has a good reputation." Catherine hesitated for a moment, but displayed a professional smile. "Of course. I'll arrange the best guide for you." She arranged a special private tour for Victoria. The guide was not herself, but Carlos, the most experienced in the company. Catherine didn't treat her sister coldly, responding politely as a business, but maintained personal distance. After the tour ended, Victoria returned to the office. Her expression held a softness never seen before. "It's a wonderful company," she said. "I can't believe you created it." It was the first genuine praise from her sister. Catherine smiled. "Everyone has the potential to change," she quietly replied. In the Barcelona twilight, Catherine held a small party with her new family, colleagues including Elena, and friends she had made locally. A warm space filled with laughter. Glass of wine in hand, she gazed at the city lights from the terrace. A year ago, she was abandoned in this city, left alone. Now she was surrounded by people who understood her value and had found a place where she could use her talents. The new chapter had only just begun.